Hi, it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. Welcome to another video in my series, Stampin' Up! Scrapbooking. Today I will create a double page layout featuring Stampin' Up's beautiful gallery 6x6 paper pack and the pretty florals dies. Both are products in the new 2025-2026 annual catalog. So here's my narrowed down selection. In addition to the 6x6 paper and tools, I brought in some 12x12 white and black cardstock and metallic adhesive dots. They're called pressed flower motifs. Everything I use will be listed below, along with my link to Stampin' Up. If you live in Canada and use the link, I will get a commission. If you have a local demonstrator, please support him or her. But if you don't and something interests you, thank you very, very much. So let's get started. Here's what's on my table. You can see I matted some photos in advance. Some of them are double matted, some of them are not matted at all. I have 10 photos. These are of a trip to France, and this is in the city of Dijon. I find this paper pack that I'm going to be using, this beautiful gallery, it's great for heritage photos, but it's also great for old world travel. That's what I bought it for. So I am going to show you this 6x6 paper pack. It's really, really striking. Some of them look like paintings. The flip side is more of a tone on tone. I'm going to show you how I use some of these that look like paintings in a different way, and I'll talk about that later in the process. Those are those pressed flower motifs. They're like metal dots. That is part of this beautiful gallery collection as well. You can also see, I'm showing you the photo with the papers. That's why I selected these papers that I did here. So those are the 12x12 cardstocks, and also this is that pretty florals die and stamp set. I'm going to be using just the dies for this layout today. In addition to that, I also have the alphabet a la mode dies. That's what I will be using for my title. I'm going to show you those right now. Those are in the current catalog as well. They measure about 2 inches high, but they're quite narrow, so you can fit quite a few alphas in one title. I have some more tools as well. I'll talk about those later on in the process when I embellish my page. The first thing I'm going to do is cut up a bunch of paper. So I will put measurements for all of this on the screen later on in the process when I adhere it to the page, because I do have quite a few pieces of paper and it won't make sense right now. You can see I'm cutting up the 6x6 paper into 2-inch chunks, and later on you're going to see I cut some of them into 3/4 inch chunks as well. Again, this will make more sense when I place it on the page, just to give you an idea how I will be using all of these papers. So I'm going to tidy all of this up in a moment, and I will come back and you can see I have all of my page parts on the table. Now I did ink them up. I'm continuing to do this, and the ink I'm using for this is Morning Mist by VersaFine Clair. It's like a smoky gray ink. Mine is really old. That's why I use it, because it's not super juicy, and I just like to add a little tiny hint of inking around all of my papers. So now what I'm going to do is place all of these on the page to let you know how I plan to move ahead with this layout. So there's going to be two borders that, well, one border that goes across the 2 pages. That's going to be in black, and that will house photos along with my journaling and a bit of embellishing. You can see that I'm adding a little narrow strip in those 6x6 pieces just underneath there. You really can't tell. You can if you look closely, but I basically bump them up one against the other. And now what you see me doing with the mat, the black mat that goes across the middle of the page, I'm basically creating a pattern with these 6-inch strips with the 3 different pattern papers. Some of them are 2 inches wide, and the narrow ones measure 3/4 of an inch wide. Now what I'm going to do is place my photos on the page and give you an idea once again how I'm moving forward with this. So I have 3 photos over there on the left. I have 2 larger photos there on the right. And in the top, I'm going to be placing photos, but I am going to be filling in the empty spaces with embellishing and journaling. I will put measurements for all of this on the screen when I actually adhere them down, because what I'm actually going to do as I'm adhering, I end up having to tweak it a bit. So the sizes that I have right now do change a little bit later on in the process. Now what you see me doing is just adhering those narrow strips underneath that wide black border for the top of the page, and I won't make you watch me do the second one. And off camera, I continued doing that, and I adhered them both to the top of the page. Now what I want to do is work on this mat that's going to have all of these 6-inch strips of paper. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just adhering them. And in this case, I'm not overlapping. I just will be bumping them up one against the other. I'm fussing at the very beginning. What I'm trying to do here is just make sure that the black margin is equal on the sides and on the edge. And once I'm happy with that, then it comes together quite quickly, because all I'm doing is just bumping up one paper against the other. I think here I decide at one point that the top is more narrow than the bottom, so I had to adjust that. But anyway, all done now, and I'm moving ahead with this, quickly adhering these strips one against the other. What I end up doing is at the end, you'll see I have a larger one at the end in that floral paper, and I cut it down. So you see me trimming it down, and what I want to do is use the excess on the other page. I continue doing that off camera, and I'm showing you that I adhered it to the foundation page. Basically, where I tweaked it was that black mat that goes across the two pages. I had to basically cut a little hair off of what I did in order to make that blue strip be cut down the middle, in the middle, so that there's 1 inch on each side. No idea if that makes any sense, but I will put measurements on the screen now. Now I'm showing you some embellishments that I created with that Pretty Florals die set. So I have some flowers and some foliage, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a bit on camera here, but you can see I've already done a bunch as well. And once I do that, then I'm going to bring out the rest of my embellishing. So I'm getting out my die cutting machine. This is the second time I've used this Pretty Florals die set on YouTube. I absolutely love it. Now I'm getting out that 6x6 paper pad again, because in it, it's not a paper pad, it's a paper pack actually. I'm showing you one, it's not really photorealistic, but photorealistic paper would work for this technique as well. This one looks like a painting. Sometimes I have trouble using papers like that. However, they are fantastic for die cutting. You can see with the peach part of this paper, which is supposed to represent a sky, I'm cutting out florals with it. This floral has 2 layers, so that's what I'm cutting out right now. And the fact that the paper isn't a solid paper makes for a really interesting flower. The same thing amongst the hills and the trees on that paper, on the image of that paper. It's fantastic for creating leaves. You're going to see that in a minute. So it is a great way to use kind of photorealistic paper, or in this case, it looks like a painting. So I'm just showing you the leaves, I'm showing you the flower there. What I will end up doing is simply adhering the layer on top of the bulk of that flower, and the adhesive I'm using is Sticky Specs by Ecstasy Crafts, so it makes just a really pretty flower there. So now I'm showing you my other embellishments. I have more of those larger flowers. Right now I'm showing you I cut out some smaller flowers as well. So I use these very same Pretty Florals dies. I'm looking for it now because there are so many dies in this kit. It's a die set that actually has 3 on it. So 1 die cuts out 3 flowers. The same thing for the layer. 1 die cuts out the 3 layers. Those are the papers that I used for that. And here are some more of the, I'm sorry, not the flowers, the leaves. So some of them are big. There's sprigs there. There's stems for the smaller flowers. Absolutely love this die set. Now what I'm going to do is show you some other stuff that I made. Now obviously flowers are kind of general, which I love using, but this is a story about being in Dijon, France, and Dijon is known for its mustard. So I wanted to make some embellishments that were more theme specific. So I went through my tools and I found this stamp and die set. It's called Jar of Love, and there are a bunch of mason jars. So I decided to stamp and cut some of them out in that brownish paper that you see that I used for my photo mat, and it made kind of interesting jugs. So I was happy with that, and I made another one as well. This was another stamp set, Country Home. Now this one didn't come with a die, but it was easy enough to fussy cut, so I just used my scissors for that. Again, my whole point here is I was just looking for something to make my embellishments more theme specific. I'm showing you this really cute owl that I made with this owl builder punch that I've had for years from Stampin' Up. There are all these different pieces that you adhere one on top of the other. Now in Dijon, the owl is an important symbol there. So I was looking for an owl and I had a great excuse to use my owl builder punch. I'm showing you that I did my journaling in advance as well, and I cut it out with these dies. They are called Textured Notes dies. They were released by Stampin' Up! In March. They're basically nesting rectangles with an embossed edging. Those are those pressed flower motifs. I have those as well. It's actually part of this beautiful gallery collection. Now you can see my title. I die cut it and I adhered it on top of these labels. So it's Dijon Day 11. These are the Alphabet à la Mode dies. Those are in the current Stampin' Up! Catalog. What I like about these is that in addition to the alphas, they have numbers, and I find that very convenient because not all alpha die sets come with numbers. I punched out some labels here. That is called, let me see, I'm just looking for it right now. Something fancy dies. I wanted to place my title on something. You can see for the word Dijon, I actually popped it up with a bit of foam adhesive. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with the day 11 at this point, so I didn't put foam adhesive on that. What I want to do right now is create embellishing in the bottom part of this page. So my main embellishment cluster is going to be in the bottom right, kind of hugging that corner, and the secondary embellishment cluster is going to be in the top left around those photos. And you can also see that off camera, I adhered those photos. I didn't press down too hard in case I want to add some embellishing coming out from underneath the photos. So you can see I've started over on the right. I started with 3 jugs there, and then I tucked in 2 large peach colored flowers behind it, then the title. I always start with the larger pieces when I create embellishment clusters. You can see I added a few leaves, the bigger leaves around the peach flowers, added the stems and those smaller flowers towards the top of that cluster. Added 1 sprig there. I'm happy with that. I will come in and add some finishing touches, some more leaves, but the bulk of it I like. So at this point, I decide I'm going to go right ahead and adhere this. So once again, starting with the bigger items, starting with these 3 jugs, and you can see when I'm creating these clusters, I'm overlapping. So they are creating an interesting cluster here. Now I'm adhering the large flowers there. I haven't adhered my title yet because I am going to want to have probably some leaves peeking out from behind it. Now what I'm doing is adding a few leaves up there towards that large flower at the top, and then I will come in with the smaller flowers. I decided to reserve my owl for the other cluster because I wanted him towards the top. I always think of owls in trees, so for me, the reason why I'm not putting my owl in this main cluster is because I think the owl should be towards the top of the page. I thought I would share that because it's actually something that's going through my mind when I'm creating this cluster. For those smaller blue flowers, I popped them up with a bit of foam adhesive, and now you can see I'm adhering my title, and that as well is popped up on foam adhesive. So again, I'm happy with this. Now what I'm going to do is move over to the left hand side. I'm just playing with a few more of those sprigs, but I do decide to wait until I do my finishing touches. So now what I'm going to do is work on the other cluster. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but I'm working on this bottom part first. And then what I will do is work on that border at the top of the page. So at this point, I do know that border at the top of the page. I have to reserve some of my embellishing to go up there because I do have some spaces up there. So what I end up doing is I tucked in that large peach flower behind that photo in the top left, came in with a few leaves. I have day 11 there, but I am not liking it. So in my mind, when I was creating the title, that's what I thought I was going to do with it. But as I am creating this, I'm not liking it. So I keep moving it around, but I feel like it's competing with Dijon. And I want Dijon to take up more visual space. So I don't want there to be competition. I want the cluster in the top left simply to complement the cluster on the bottom right, but I don't want them to compete against each other. So for that reason, at this point, I decide to skip day 11 that's on that white label. Well, I'm trying it again, but I do end up skipping it for a while. Later on, you're going to see I do manage to fit it in. Now I'm coming in, just adding a few more of those sprigs there. So I'm happy with that. And now what I will do is I will start working on that cluster, or I should say that border at the top of the page. So I'm going to get out my other photos here. I do want to point out, I'll show you at one point, that all of these photos, even though they're not matted, I did add a layer of scrap cardstock behind them just so that they would pop up a little bit off the page. So I'm fitting in my photos. I know I want my journaling to go up there, and I will put in a few more embellishings. At this point, the journaling isn't high enough, so that's bothering me. I will end up filling that in with some pattern paper. You'll see me do that in a minute. Here I go, trying to fit in day 11, but for some reason it's just not working for me. So I'm moving ahead. You can see I've got a couple of those barrels there, or jars, whatever you want to call them, in the top left. Now what I want to do is work on my journaling box. So I really want to fill in that box area there. So I'm coming in with some of the different pattern papers that I've used. I decide to cut myself out a block in that medium color. The color is actually called Pecan Pie. So I'm going to fill in the block. I know it's 3¼ inches. I'm not quite sure how long to cut it, so I trim it down there. Again, the measurements are on the screen. It is 3¾ inches by 3¼ inches. I'm thinking that maybe I will put a little flower. I have one of those peach flowers left over, and I actually do glue it in that area. But when I go to adhere everything down, I don't like it. It's just too big. At this point, though, that's what I think I'm going to do. So I inked up that pecan pie colored block. I'm adhering my journaling, kind of pushing it towards the bottom at this point because I think I'm going to be adhering in a giant flower behind there. Now I'm coming in with some of those sprigs because I have a few of them left there, and I'm using my Sticky Specs adhesive to do it. But when I put it up there, I don't really like it. And on top of that, it's actually creating kind of a bump underneath my journaling that's bothering me. So what I did off camera was I adhered the photos along the top, including my journaling, but I decided to get rid of the flower. And you can see instead, I just added 2 narrow strips of that blue floral paper. So it's a little bit more, I don't know, discreet, and I like that better. So I continued adhering those photos over on the left, but now what I have to do is fill in that open area on the far left. So I'm playing with those jugs there. I have it tucked under the photo. At one point, you're going to see it does sort of overlap the photo. But what I'm thinking of doing at this point, instead of creating a separate cluster, is basically kind of extending the cluster that I've already created. So you can see I have the jugs there. Now it's overlapping my photo. I've got a little sprig in there. And it's at this point, I think maybe I can add day 11 there, because on the right page, I have 2 white blocks, my journaling and Dijon, and I feel like I need a 3rd white block over on the left page, but I really didn't like day 11 taking up so much visual space basically on top of that photo on the far left. So as you can see, I trimmed down that label. I basically lobbed off the far left end. And now what you see me doing is adhering these pieces. And day 11 is basically going to bleed off the left-hand side of the page. So I'm happy with that. It's a little bit more discreet. At the same time, I still have that white block over there that I felt like I needed. So now I'm coming in with some finishing touches, and I have these pressed flower motifs, which are basically metal adhesive dots. I end up putting a few of them by day 11, just at the end of that label. I'm happy with that. I think I'm going to repeat the same thing over on Dijon. I try a few different things. I try one on each end. I don't like that. In the end, what I end up going with is the same thing, just 3 dots on one side, and I'm happy with that. And what I will do off camera is I will add a few more dots just above my journaling there. Actually, what I end up doing is putting them in each of the 4 corners. You will see that in the still shots at the end. And now, just before completing, all I am doing here is coming in with some foam adhesive and popping up the larger leaves. But basically, that's it. Here is my finished layout. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be thrilled if you did. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very, very much. Have a great day, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.